guys, it's Laurie here, and I'm here to do a breakdown on all things on Aussie culture that come up in Heartbreak High. Now, I've actually done already one for season 1, and I've already done the beginning of season 2 on my last video. I went over on what happened on episode 1, 2 and 3, but don't worry, I'm not going to be giving any spoilers away because I'm just going over on all things Aussie culture that I know blows over the Americans' heads. Okay, so we're starting off in episode 4 now, and in case you haven't seen the show, this one starts off when the kids are at camp.
We're about to bunking.
Wherever you are, obviously.
One of the things you will notice that there is a sign that has like directions to all areas around the campgrounds, and one of them says Bangia. So what's Bangia? It's actually just an Australian plant. It's actually a really hardy flower that grows, and one of the really cool things about this particular plant is it needs extreme heat for the seed pods to pop open, and when they do, they burst into these beautiful amazing plants that grow these beautiful amazing flowers, and it is just very iconic and Australian.
This is what camp's all about. Students getting their hands dirty, fighting a goanna. Survival of the fittest.
Timothy Voss, the sport teacher with all things masculinity here, talking about wrestling a goanna. So what's a goanna? It's just a lizard. So here in Australia we have many different types of lizards, but yes, goannas don't live 100% in Australia. They also live in parts of Southeast Asia as well. But goanna is just another name for monitor lizard. So where I'm from, I live here in Western Australia, and we actually tend to call the sand groupers or sand goannas Bangia, which apparently is actually a Aboriginal term. But yeah, I've always just called them Bangia. But don't worry, they're not all big. We also have little lizards as well, like this cute little skink that tried to steal my lunch last time I went down to the beach. Booze.
Booze!
It's just alcohol. So the next scene here, we have Darren here, and he's trying to make a phone call, and he's trying to call 000. Here in Australia, 000 is actually the number for emergency services. Okay, before I go into much about the next scenes to come, we have Ant here, and he's clearly on the effects of mushrooms.
Do you accept a little kiss, maybe?
But here we find him flirting with Snuggle Pot. Okay, so obviously it's a tree. This particular character came from a children's book series I'm pretty sure was actually written back in the early 1900s, and the book was called Snuggle Pot and Cuddle Pie. Now, as of later years, the book series, or mainly the illustrations as all, have actually come under a little bit of controversy because the characters are homoculi. And so what does that mean? It just means they're like fully grown beings but in a small body, and the illustrations are that of naked babies. A lot of people were unimpressed with the fact that their privates were just covered by a gum leaf, but in my personal opinion, I think the woke brigade are going a little bit too far into this one. It's just illustrations to a harmless children's book series. Okay, so the next scene here. Now this isn't 100% Australian, but as I was watching this scene, the only thing I could think of was the current news situation that kind of went viral in Australia recently. So if you haven't watched the series already, sorry, I did say no spoilers, but there is a scene where all the students find mushrooms, and yeah, they get high on shrooms, and you have to kind of watch it. It is absolutely hilarious. But like I said, the only thing I could think of was the mushroom lady. Okay, so if you've been living under a rock lately and you missed the big Australian news story about the mushroom lady, what it was a lady, her name was Erin Peterson. She invited her family over to lunch, and after the lunch, 3 people died and 1 person was severely injured from eating death cap mushrooms. So people didn't just eat mushrooms as whole. It was actually in a meal called beef Wellington, which, yeah, mushrooms are part of the recipe. Okay, so some of the people that she invited over to this lunch was her former mother and father-in-law, and also the sister to the former mother-in-law. And these were the people that unfortunately died. But there was one other person, and it was the husband to that sister, and he unfortunately became severely injured. I think he spent months in hospital and ended up needing a liver transplant to survive. So obviously huge investigations went underway to find out why so many people had died after eating the beef Wellington, and Erin Peterson claims that she purchased the mushrooms from a Woolworths, which is a major supermarket here in Australia, and an Asian grocer. But a lot of people are wondering if she's telling fibs, because while the investigation was going on, it was found out that she had disposed of a food dehydrator. So her ex-husband was also invited to this meal, but he declined to come because apparently there has been times before where she's cooked for him where he's become severely sick as well. So it makes you wonder what's going on there. But like I said, lots of investigations went underway, and you wouldn't believe. Not only was Erin Peterson charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 attempted murder for the people that came and ate the beef Wellington at her lunch, I think it was, but she was also charged for previous cases for her ex-husband. So with huge investigations that went on with him, he had been hospitalized before as well with an unknown illness that happened over multiple times. And with huge investigations into that one as well, you worked out that it's from meals that she had cooked him as well. And don't worry, she's behind bars now. I wouldn't be eating at your enemies' houses. Now, okay, like I said, I was going over everything Aussie culture that happens in this show, and yes, this thing isn't exactly Aussie culture, but I just wanted to put this one in there. And the only thing I really wanted to say out of this is, don't be going and eating any old mushroom that you find in the bush. There are obviously mushrooms that you can eat, but there's also a lot of mushrooms that you can't. You'll actually find even here in lots of places around the world, but here in Australia as well, even in your suburban areas, you have lots of little mushrooms that might pop up on the lawn after a huge amount of rain, and yeah, they're poisonous as well. So don't be going and eating anything, because you don't know, you might potentially be accidentally eating a death cap mushroom. Okay, so we have Timothy at it again, Mr. Voss, and all things masculinity. Here it's mentioned, well, Jojo's the one that mentions it, is Ivan Milat.
When I was an adolescent and struggled with my emotions, my dad would drive me to Bangia State Forest, drop me off, force me to find my way back home.
Right, the same forest where Ivan Milat buried his victims.
Very same.
Yes.
Ivan Milat has actually become a little bit more popular worldwide due to the movie called Wolf Creek. But yeah, Ivan Milat in Australia is actually a real person. Well, he's dead now. So Ivan Milat was actually a real person, and what he would do was he would pick up his victims who were hitchhikers and yeah, murder them. So between 1989 and 1992, he picked up 2 men and 5 women in total, and you know, with the potential saying that he was going to take them to the destination, but in the end what he ended up doing was torturing these people, robbing them, and then murdering them. So he would bury them in the Bangia State Forest. Now, even though he was picked up and charged for these particular crimes, there is also a lot of mystery to whether or not he actually did a lot more things, because there were a lot more mishaps and crimes, murders and whatnot, and missing people that seem to have come about in the areas that he had been traveling through as well. So no one really knows. But going back to the story, you have Timothy Voss, and he mentions the fact that his father would drop him off in the state forest and make him find his way back home in a way to toughen him up and be a man. But how else would he get out? And generally back then a lot of people would hitchhike, so it's actually quite a surprise that Timothy Voss never became one of Ivan Milat's victims. So one of the next big scenes is we have Quinny, and she gets bitten by a snake. Sorry if I'm giving a spoiler away to the show, but yes, it happens. Now, okay, not 100% Australian here, but it's no mistake that here in Australia we have, I think it's 9 out of the top 10 deadliest snakes in the world. I think it's like the cobra or something from India. That's the one we don't have. But yeah, we got all of the rest of them, which is yeah, pretty messed up. But yes, the one that she essentially was bitten by in the show was supposedly a western brown snake. And western brown snakes are actually also on the top 10 list of most dangerous snakes in the world. So they're supposedly very territorial, they can be quite vicious, and they're known to continuously attack their prey, obviously to kill, which is why they are known as one of the most dangerous snakes to come across in the world. But also they are highly venomous, which is probably very smart for the character Quinny to lay extremely still to try and prevent the poison from running through her body. I know it's just a character in a show and all the rest of it, but my personal opinion, if that happened in real life, I don't think she would have survived. But it is a show and they need to make light out of it. So yeah, unfortunately here in Australia, coming across snakes in the wild is a thing. I actually have been very lucky. I'm one of those people who go out actually quite a lot. Actually, if you haven't seen my other content, I actually do make outdoorsy type of content. I quite enjoy going out to hiking trails and seeing waterfalls and wildflowers and all the rest of it, but I'm very smart and I don't do it in the wrong time of the year, and I'm also very careful about where I tread, which is actually why I haven't made any outdoorsy content in the last few months. And that's because we've just had summer here in Perth, and summer has actually been extended, which is why I haven't done a hell of a lot lately, because it's just been so hot and dry. But yeah, that's because there is freaking snakes everywhere. I think even one of the last times I went out to see wildflowers, which was in a suburban area which is not too far away from us, I nearly came across a tiger snake. I actually did see one that was crawling across the pathway. Unfortunately, I wasn't quick enough to pull my camera out, and there was another time when I was walking past and I saw another tiger snake quickly go into the bush, and I think what had happened is it must have been resting in the dead leaves on the side of the pathway. And yeah, tiger snakes are also on the top 10 list as well, so yes, need to be pretty careful.
Each party is assigned a seat in the lower house. The party with the majority seats win.
Who cares? They're all tossers shitting their pants who don't get any Maccas anyway.
Harper, and she's revising some of her schoolwork, and you hear her talk about Australian politics. Now, Australian politics is so boring. I'm not going to talk about politics because boring. But you do hear Engadine Maccas come up. And what is the whole thing with Engadine Maccas and our politics? And it's none other than ScoMo. So ScoMo, his name is Scott Morrison. He was our Prime Minister. He was the last one. We have a new guy now. Yeah, I did mention in the last video that our politics always seem to swap and change. It's a little bit hard to keep up with it. But yes, ScoMo, yeah, we hounded this guy because I think out of the whole year that I think the last year that he was in office, he was only there for 9 days, and there was huge things where there was huge bushfires going on, and he was holidaying off in Hawaii, and he would venture off here when the country was going into shit over here. So yeah, as people, we would give him a lot of shit for it. I mean, look at the guy trying to weld. Where does Engadine Maccas come into it? Okay, so allegedly back in 1997, Scott Morrison went to Engadine Maccas and shat his pants. So we always like to joke saying, don't go to Engadine Maccas, ScoMo shat his pants at Engadine Maccas. But did he actually? Now, it's became such a thing and it became such an Australian meme that even ScoMo himself had to come out and deny that he never shat himself at Engadine Maccas. Where did it come from? Alright, it was all made up and it was just a tweet. Okay, so the whole rumour came from an Australian rapper who goes by the name of Joyride, and the tweet read, Scott Morrison shat himself at Engadine Maccas, oh sorry, it actually says McDonald's, after the Sharks lost the grand final in 1997. It was all just a joke. Joyride fella, he tends to say that a lot about a lot of other celebrities and politicians, and yeah, but the whole joke or the whole meme of ScoMo shitting himself at Engadine Maccas became so like it ran Australia by storm that Engadine Maccas even has a plaque just like on this day in 1997 that ScoMo shat his pants. For those that don't understand, here in Australia we like a bit of banter, and yeah, we just love giving people shit.
You have to vote.
What? No, you don't.
What? Yes, you do. Did you not register when you turned 18? They'll send you back to jail.
You're 18.
And then also in that same little topic, the whole being 18 thing comes up. The whole thing is like they keep mentioning the fact that, oh Cash, you're 18 years old. And what they're going on about that is here in Australia at the age of 18 you are legally an adult. You can buy cigarettes, you can buy alcohol, and the big thing is you can legally vote.
Wait, I think this painting might actually be a fake. Oh, yeah, look. Made in China.
Missy and Spider and Spider's mom, who we find out is a bit of a Karen. But here we actually see Missy point out to Spider's mom that the Aboriginal artwork that she has on the wall is a fake. Now, in Australia, it's technically not illegal to paint or draw Aboriginal artwork or even sell it, but it's highly frowned upon.
Is that a bush stuff?
Bush stuff, it's just what we call an outdoor rave. I went over a lot here, but we're already up to episode 11 now, and Pavlova comes up. Now, you're actually seeing Pavlova. They don't actually show Pavlova in the scenes. You're actually seeing a lamington, which is what is being thrown. There is a huge thing to whether or not Pavlovas and lamingtons are Australian or New Zealand. Now, I think technically they came from New Zealand, but the recipes were brought to Australia and we kind of made it our own. But Pavlova, what Pavlova is a dessert that we generally serve here around Christmas time. It's one thing that a lot of people serve for dessert at Christmas lunch. And it is a meringue with thickened cream, and then it is decorated with fruit. Generally it's different types of berries like raspberries and strawberries and blueberries, but also kiwi fruit as well. So there's your New Zealand. And then lamington, what lamington is also another popular dessert here in Australia. This particular treat is a sponge cake, and it's usually cut into cubes, and there's usually a jam layer in the middle, and it is coated in a chocolate and rolled in coconut, and it tastes beautiful. So debate down in the comments below, do you think Pavlova and lamingtons are Australian or New Zealand? Okay, we're up to episode 12 now, and we are back to the school dance. So I did mention right at the very beginning when I talked about season 2 on the last video that it started off at the school formal. Now we're back to the timeline now where that one started off as, and yes, we are at the school formal, which is, you know, the big school dance, year 11 school dance, and everyone is doing a line dance. And what's this line dance everyone's doing? It is the nutbush. This is iconically Australian. But you're thinking, okay, but the music. Now I can't play the music here due to copyright, but yeah, the music is the Nutbush by Tina Turner. Tina Turner, she's not even Australian, she's American. I know, but we've taken that song and that song is ours now. We've stolen that, it is Australian. But in general, what it actually started off as, it was a school curriculum, and they were trying to find ways to incorporate like sport activities and art, or like into one, and teaching everyone a line dance to get like a little bit of physical activity kind of started. And the line dance itself, it was actually very much inspired by the backup dancers in Tina Turner's original music video. But yes, this line dance, now we call the Nutbush, is ours. It's actually very easy. It's one of those line dances that is extremely simple. There's only a few steps to have to learn, and when like whether or not you know the dance or not, it doesn't really matter, because all you need to do is just look at the person next to you and you can quickly follow along. It is so Australian that it is taught in primary schools still to this day, and it's a huge thing at birthday parties and obviously weddings. My problem is I start laughing too much and I can't dance very well.
Oi! There's a bunch of Ned Kellys on the oval!
Helen!
What?
I said, this is our last stand!
No, I can't understand you because you've got a dustbin on your head or something.
Alright, and so now we have Timothy Voss at it again, now this time with the Cum Lords, and he's dressed as none other than Ned Kelly. So who the hell's Ned Kelly? Well, Ned Kelly was actually an Australian bushranger. So he was around in the early 1800s and he is famously known for his bulletproof outfit that he wore in a gun battle that he had with police. Ned Kelly's story, quite an interesting one. Okay, so I'm sure all you know that here in Australia, it started as a convict colony. And yes, Ned Kelly's father was also a convict, so he was sent here to Australia. And due to that, Ned Kelly, as a child, grew up extremely poor, where often the family had become squatters. Squatting in Australia was actually a huge thing back in the early day. Not so much now, but it still happens. Ned Kelly himself, he was also into a lot of criminal activity, and he also went to jail for a period of time as a teen, and apparently the charges were to do with stealing a horse. So he was part of a group which were kind of known as bush larrikins, and they were also into thievery, and they generally, what they did was steal stock or like livestock. Later on, his family's home was raided by police, and even though Ned Kelly fled, unfortunately in the whole debacle, his mother was arrested. And due to that, I think that's why Ned Kelly had such a fight against police, because from my understanding, his mum never really did anything wrong. She was just kind of like, unfortunately, with the wrong people. So there was a huge thing back in 1880, which I think this still had something to do with it, where he was trying to get back at police for what they did to his mother. Apparently he tried to derail a police train, which failed. So the police tried to get them, but then with him and his gang, with the famous Ned Kelly armor, you know, with the which apparently was also stolen, they had a shootout with the police. All his other gang members died from being shot by police. He was the only one that did survive, but apparently was severely injured and then was arrested. He was later sentenced to death at the old Melbourne jail, which you can actually take a tour at today and find a little bit of history of Ned Kelly there. I've never done that myself, but my parents went and they did say it was actually pretty interesting. Now you're probably thinking, what the hell has this guy got to do with Australian culture? Now, yes, he was a criminal and he did do a lot of bad things, but I think the whole thing is mainly because it's an underdog story. Apparently he was a type of Robin Hood form of bushranger, so he, you know, the whole taking from the rich and giving to the poor was his thing, which is why he would steal stock and he would supply it to not only his members but apparently the poorer people as well, allegedly. But I think part of it actually kind of became glamorized due to a movie that was made about him in 1906, which is actually the very first feature film documentary, and it was called The Story of the Kelly Gang. So in real life, when Ned Kelly was hanged, his very last words were, "Ah, well, I suppose." But in the movie that was made about him, the famous last words were, "Such is life." And to this day, the word "such is life" has actually become ingrained in Australia in general. It's a little bit like the whole YOLO, when people used to say YOLO. But yeah, the whole "such is life" is such a big Australian thing. A lot of people to this day believe that Ned Kelly was the one that actually said it, but no, it was just the movie character. But such is life.
The flames are a symbol of a phoenix rising from the ashes, and I am that symbol. I am the phoenix!
And then right at the very end here, you have Mr. Timothy Voss again getting arrested, and he is like obviously screeching about like the phoenix and the flames and all the rest of it. I do think the words that are coming out of his mouth are a little bit, you know, higgledy-piggledy there, but my opinion is it's kind of another bit of a piss take on the Mr. Democracy Manifest fella. And if you want to know more about the Mr. Democracy Manifest, you have to watch my previous video here, which I went over Aussie culture that comes up in episode 1, 2 and 3 of Heartbreak High. So like I said, this isn't the usual type of content that I make here on YouTube. I like to do things that are a lot more outdoorsy, going out hiking, bush trails, swimming, even geocaching, if you know what that one is. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure you check around and check out my other videos. Make sure you're subbed, and I'll see you next time.